Good Monday morning. Matthew Buckley, the Chief Investment Strategist at Wealth Creation Investing, and a huge week, not only in global events, but domestic U.S. economic policy as well. Obviously, the G8 starting today, and President Obama and Putin are going to have a face-to-face later on. It's going to be obviously a little chilly. Putin said on his way to the G8 meeting, absolutely, we will not support or allow a no-fly zone over Syria. And yesterday's talk shows were full of U.S. politicians calling for a no-fly zone over Syria. Obama, of course, agreeing finally 2 years into this horrible conflict that has killed 100,000 people to provide weapons to Syrian rebels. So it's going to be an interesting discussion with those two. Putin, obviously, and China, big supporters of Assad, and obviously the whole world against Assad. So going to be a very interesting meeting. There's no way they're going to find any sort of common ground on Syria. So it's going to be interesting to see how the markets react to this, if they do. Obviously, this is kind of a sideshow to everything else that's going on here domestically. In the United States. Yeah, we have some New York Empire and Philly Fed and some Eurozone PMIs, but the biggest thing going on this week, obviously, is the Fed's meeting, the FOMC meeting, and Bernanke's resulting press conference afterwards. Goldman Sachs not looking for really any significant changes in what the Fed's doing, and it's interesting because every time we have one of these Fed meetings, the financial media go crazy saying this is the most important Fed meeting ever, and of course they're saying it about this one as well. But I don't see the Bernanke. I agree with Goldman Sachs. I don't see the Bernanke doing that much, especially when the economy appears very sluggish right now. So I expect them to hold the policy tight and not really give time frame as to the tapering, but reaffirming that any sort of tapering is going to be linked to data. Just the economy improving, and we've covered this last week at Top Gun Options and WCI that there's a couple conditions that the Fed would, there's a good, bad, and the ugly. The good of the Fed tapering would be if the economy is good. If we're having a smooth handoff between monetary easing and the economy getting better, then I think the markets are fine. But the bad would be the Fed waking up and saying, you know what we're doing is probably bad for the dollar, for our overall economy, and for the market, so it's time to leave. Obviously, that would be a bad, and as we've seen in Japan over the past couple of weeks, lead to unprecedented volatility and an implosion of the markets. Speaking in Japan later on in the week, Bank of Japan Governor Gr8 is speaking, and the EWJ this morning, the iShares Japan ETF is catching a nice bid here, almost about 40 cents. So a nice bid out of the EWJ. I think the Nikkei regained the 13,000 level overnight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Japan this week, because again, world markets are watching what they're doing as well, because they've taken a copy and paste out of the Fed playbook, doing it in Japan, not necessarily working, and the fact that they didn't recently add some more afterburner, some more fuel to their easing, sent the markets into a turmoil and a temper tantrum, as I called it last week. But so Bank of Japan meeting this week, or Kuroda's speech, the central bank meeting, and the G8 summit. So going to be a very interesting week. We're going to, since it is such a huge week in the markets, we've decided to do an open house over at Top Gun Options. We're going to open up our primary live trade brief tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., our advanced live trade brief, and our weekly options live trade brief as well later on in the week. So just follow the link in this email to register, and you can get on board and see what I have to think and my other traders have to think at Top Gun Options about what's going on in the markets this week, and watch as we put on some potential positions and manage them in our model portfolios. Okay, got to run. Happy hunting. Make sure you hedge, and I'll see you potentially tomorrow morning at 0900 in the primary live trade brief.